Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is your instructor engineer Mirbad, and as I told you in the previous lab, today we will be covering AJAX. So it will be basically a combination of AJAX and JSON because they are linked together. So in the last lab we did we covered JSON, and after that we talked about RESTful APIs a little bit. So in today's lab we have to implement AJAX in JavaScript, and we will also use JSON. Then we will implement a case example on it, and then a lab assessment for you guys. So first of all, what is AJAX? So as I told you, it's linked with the previous lab. So basically AJAX means AJAX, that is asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Now you will be wondering about that. I told you that we will be using JSON as a communication language, but here we are talking about XML because AJAX, X is for XML. So XML, when AJAX was first used, so at that time only XML was used for the data transfers. So it was a data format, but now we have shifted to JSON, so we'll be using JSON with AJAX. Anyways, let's I have 3-4 pictures of AJAX that covers the properties of AJAX. So what is the most important property of AJAX? It is that it does not require refreshing of page to get data. So like if I am on, let's say this is a website and this is an HTML page, and I want to change this whole data, or let's say I want to change this image. So what would I do? If I do not use AJAX, so I have to refresh the page, and this image will be changed afterwards. But the beauty of AJAX is that I can change this image like how 10 times, 20 times, 100 times just by clicking somewhere or doing some action. So this image will be changed without the refresh. So no refresh is allowed. No refresh is used here. Then AJAX can request external data from a server. Definitely it can receive external data from a server. So and it can send data to a server. So it can request, receive, and send data to and from a server. So basically when a user goes to a website, the user has to wait for the server to respond with the data. This is not the case with AJAX. We have the option to load the data when the user is already on the page, making the user really happy. So this is what I described previously. Okay, these are some of the key players, I must say, key players of AJAX. All of these technologies are used in AJAX. So first of all, JavaScript, you know what does JavaScript do? So it is used for data manipulation and data handling. Then it is DOM. You people should have covered DOM in the theory, so I won't be going in the detail of this, but DOM is basically a document object model. So it is a cross-platform and language independent application programming interface that treats an HTML or XML document as a tree structure. So DOM has a tree structure having different branches, and every node represents basically an object of the document. Okay, then CSS, I won't go in the detail again because you know what does CSS do. Then we will be using this HTML HTTP request in our example in this lab. So for the short we use XHR for it, that is XML HTTP request, XHR. So what is XHR? It is basically an API in the form of an object whose methods transfer data between a web browser and a web server. So we'll be creating something in the using our JavaScript and XHR, and then it will receive or transfer data to and from a web server that we also did in the previous lab. That was a random user generator. So we'll be continuing that same example here. Then we should have a server side definitely for AJAX to work, and then we'll be using JSON. Okay, so now you people should have the understanding that basically AJAX is not a programming language, but it is a group of technologies. So combination of technology within the browser, that is XHR objects, JavaScript, and DOM, etc., to connect the request. Okay, so not only for XML, but can also be used for JSON and text data. Okay, so these were some of the properties of AJAX. So let's begin our lab. So first of all, I have opened a folder here, and let's start with the starter code. Okay, so this is the previous class, so I'll just remove it. Okay, now I'll be starting basically with the XHR object. So first of all, for that, let's have a variable of name. Let's call it AJAX. You can call it anything. Equal to new XHR, XML HTTP request XHR, right? So we have made a XHR object here. Now let's open it with live server. Let's see. All right, inspect. So reload enabled. All right, so there's no error. That's great. Now let's moving forward. So we have used the AJAX object. So it has different. The XHR has different properties or attributes. Some of it is like onload, restart, on progress, ready state. This is a very important parameter, ready state. So this state, when the state changes, we get to know that XHR is working. Then the response text, response type, it's a little bit, not a little bit, but it is also necessary, and status and many other parameters, attributes. So we have made an AJAX object. Now let's all right, now let's study about the ready state. So for ready state, I'll make a function that is AJAX dot that is ready state, and we'll not ready state, that is on ready state change. So whenever the ready state changes, so we'll make a function. So that function will be called, and here we'll write about we'll just simply console.log, and let's say AJAX dot ready state. So let's save it, and okay, so you can see that it does not output anything. In order to start the XHR object, we have to send the data first. So we have made a new XHR, then we have to send the data. So I'll write AJAX dot send. Now let's save it. So it will give you an error. It would say that in order to execute the send, first you have to open the XHR object. So for that we have to use, before the send, we have to use an open function, open, and in open we have to give it two parameters. Number first is the request that we want. Let's say I use a get request that we have covered yesterday, and then we'll use the URL that we want to get the data from. So let's use the, yesterday's the previous lab's URL. So it was, if I remember exactly, it was random user.me, if I'm not wrong, .me, and then it was /API. Okay, so this is the we are getting the data from random user.me API, and then there is a an optional parameter, that is we write true. So if you don't even write it, so it won't give you any error. Anyways, so what we have done, we have made a new XHR, then we have opened the request, and then we have sent the request. So let's save it now. Okay, so now what are we printing? We are printing the ready state. So basically, what is the ready state? We have 4 ready states, or I must say 5 ready states, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's put one other thing over here, and let's say I want to add AJAX dot status that we just saw there in previously. So status, and let's save it. Okay, so, or maybe I can also add for just a beautification or learning purpose, I would write status changed plus. All right. Alright, let's save it. So first of all, it says whenever it sends the data, so the ready state changes, so it would call this function, and it would display state changed, the ready state, and the status. So in first it says state changed, then 1, that is the ready state, and that is the status of the HTTP request. It is a return value. Then state change, then 2, then 200. So basically, what is this 200? This 200 is that we have discussed in previously. It is the HTTP status code. So 200 means that the execution is successful. So this is 200. And what about the state changes? So these are the state changes of XHR ready state. So first of all, if it is 0, it means it is unsent, right? Then previously, as when we just wrote when we just made this XHR object, we didn't do anything else, so the ready state was 0, if you remember. So at that time there was nothing was sent from XHR. Then it gets to open state, then it gets to headers received, then it gets to loading, and then done. So these are basically the state changes depending on every stage of the ready state. So these are the state changes, and these are the return status. Okay, all right. Then if I let's say if I go a little bit further and I want to use let's just all right. All right, let's just okay. Now let's say I want to use just a function of XHR. Let me just show you here first. So I would write AJAX. So okay, so now you can see that the ready state has changed to 4, and this is the response text. That is all the data about a random user, so the gender, male, and name, and all the attributes. So this is that, and this is the status, that is 200, and so on. This is the response URL. All right, now let's say I want to use on progress. So I want to see what on progress is. So I would just simply write ajax dot on progress, and whenever it changes, so it will call function, and let's say I log out, I log something. I say that progress, and AJAX dot ready state, and AJAX dot status. All right, so now let's save it. So see, I come here. So progress is basically the loading. So whenever we get to the stage of on progress, so this function will be called, and it would display the ready state and the status. Now let's say if I just copy paste it and I do it for, let's say, on load. I'll show it to you over here. So AJAX on load, let's say this one, on load, that is when everything is done. So on load, so let's save it. So see, the last one is on load, that is the done. So this is how we can use the every property separately. All right, now okay, now what I want to do is the task we did in the previous lab was what we did was we used this URL, that is randomuser.me.api, and we displayed a user with his name and picture over here. Now what we will do is we will change the user and his name just on a click of a button. So we will get to know the functionality of AJAX without refreshing the page. When we just click the button, so the user will get changed. For that, let's first create a button. So I would write under the division, I would write, I'll create a button. So button, let's say I give it an ID of load new, and I write load. So this is the name of the button, load. Save it. So we have got this button load. Now let's come to the JavaScript and we will give the button some functionality. So as done in the last lab, I would write variable output is equal to document dot get element by ID, and the element is output. So element is output, right? This is the ID. Okay, let's just go one element. Okay, right. Now I would make a button click variable, button click, you can name it anything, and it would be document dot get element by ID again, and it would be the load new button that we have just made here, load new, right? And then we'll make an event listener. So button click dot add event listener, and an event listener, we will say that if it is clicked, the button is clicked, so you have to call a function. And what would the function do? It would what would the function do? It would load a it would call a function that we can name load AJAX. Let's say we call it load AJAX. You can again call it anything. All right. Okay. So now what we would do is everything we have written previously, we will cover it in a function that is load AJAX. So starting and ending, it would go to the end. All right. Or not here, no, it should be over here. Okay. So once this button is clicked, so it will get the element by ID of this button, and it would once it is clicked, it would load this function, and a new XHR will be made, and then this will be opened. We will get data from random user.me, and we'll send the data. All right. So now I can write here that if once the state is changed, so we'll write if, just remember the codes again. So we will simply write if AJAX dot read ready state equals 4, so it means when it is ready, and if AJAX dot status is equal to 200. So or we can just write it simply like this, just for programming purpose, and simply write this and all right. So once the ready state is loaded completely, it is on stage 4, and the status is 200, that is, it is okay. What would we do? We would simply let's say we make a simple object of whatever data we get. So we will parse it as done previously, and it would be AJAX dot response text. So let's say if I write AJAX here, so all I'm getting is this response text. So what is there in the response text? All the information about the random user. Okay, so I'll get the response text and I'll parse it to get it into a format of proper JSON. Then I would write, let's say I make another variable, let's call it data. So let's say it is JSON, and if you remember, where was the data stored? So it was stored in it was in results. Yeah, so it was in results and 0. So we did it in the previous lab. The information about the user was stored in the results. This is the results, and it was basically an array. If we just break it down, so it was an array of 0 element. It was just an array of length 1, so we have to call the first element. So results. So now let's make a message so that we can output it once we load the button, click the load button. So let's say it is data dot name or just let's save it first. Okay, it has some problem at line 20. Oh, sorry, this is redundant. Save it. Let me just get back with the error solved. Okay, sorry, I just got a little bit confused. Basically, that was all right, the previous one. So, okay, you're right. I just forgot to use the parenthesis of the function. I hope it works now. Alright, so there is no error. Okay, so now we have loaded the data. So I will make another variable, let's call it message, to get the username and not the username, the first name, last name, and the image of the user over here. So I would simply use data dot name dot first. I guess there's some problem because it is not loading yet. Anyways, let's first check it over here. So data. So to save some time, let me just debug it and then I'll come back. Okay, so there was no problem. I just rechecked it. So just write this code, this whole code. So first we got the response text from the request. Then we parse the data and we save the data in the JSON. It is a structured data, or like just like in the pattern of JSON. Then we got this array, results array from JSON, and we saved it in the data. Now let's see what we can. So I've just used the first name, so it works. All right. Okay, so let's also use the last name. So that is data dot name dot last. All right, then plus, let's say I want to use an image. So the image was saved in so it has a source, image source, and the source was basically in data dot picture, and in picture it was most probably in thumbnail and large. Yeah, it was in large. So okay, let's close it. Let's see what we have now. So now let's load it. All right, so first name, last name, and the picture of Mr. Emil. So now let's beautify it a little bit if you want to. So all right, now let's beautify it. So for that I have to use let's make it h2. So I would simply use h2 and then plus load. All right, so h2. I can also use a line break if I'm not wrong. So let's finish the page 2 right here. Load. Okay, so this is done. So now we have implemented AJAX in our previous code, and what we can do, we can load new users without even refreshing the page. So if I refresh the page, I can change the users. See, you can change the users. All right, so this was the basics of AJAX. Now let's see what we have next. We just back. Okay, so now this is just an example. I've already written the code, so just to save time, but you people should, I'll go I'll go line by line in the code. So first of all, just as before, we have a button ID that is we named it something else. Let's say we named it trigger, and the button name is get a joke. So whenever we click the button, so it will go to this URL, that is api.chucknorris.io/jokes/random. So it will reload a random joke over here. So what have we done? Same as previous event listener, and we have just changed this to trigger. It is just another way to use the calling function. So there we use the output method, here we use the query selector. Okay, so then simple as that. A new XHR here, open, send, and here we checked that if the ready state is 4 and it's 200, the status is 200. So what we will do, we'll just get the data from here, and we will parse the text. We'll get it into JSON pattern, then we will display an image and the joke. So let's run it. So this is a joke, that this is the image, this is the joke. When Chuck Norris walks through dark alleys, muggers give Chuck their wallet. So some of the jokes are really I mean, I don't laugh at some jokes, and some jokes are really bad, so just forget about that. All right, so this is how we can implement some other API. All right, now I'll be moving towards a case study, and again I've already written the code, so I will just be explaining the code for you guys. So in this case study, you will also have an assessment. So what are we doing in this example? We are calling two APIs here, just as we used the random user and the Chuck Norris jokes. So what we will do is we will call two APIs, like one is as let's check. Number one is Wikipedia, the API of Wikipedia, and number two is YouTube. So what we will do, we will make a search button and a search bar, and whatever we write in that search, so this AJAX will search it in the Wikipedia page and give us all the content of that search, and also it will give us the URL from which it has received the data. So it is done using an API of Wikipedia. That is this is the API. Okay, and then we'll also display 3 to 4 videos based on that search, having from the YouTube API. So let's first run it and let's check what it is. So open with live server. All right, so this is just a default. Let's say I search for anything, let's say Toyota, and let's click it. So you can see that it has got the data from the en.wikipedia, this URL, and this is the data. We can change this data, I'll tell you how. And these are this is done from the Wikipedia API, and this is done from the YouTube API. So we have this. Let's say I click this video, so it will go to other tab and it will play the video. All right. So what is done here? That's it. All right. So first of all, same as before, these are just the metadata. This is done just for the this is only done for the beautification purpose. So width, size, and everything, just forget about it at the moment. Now, okay, so the header, then we have a button for search, then we have an input where we have the text and its name or its ID is search term. So remember this is the ID of this search section. We have made also two other divisions having IDs, output of Wikipedia and output of YouTube. Then on the click, we use the previously used functions. So it will call on click, it will call the show results, this one function. So in first, as this is the search item, so it will get the input from the search item, the search term. It will get the input, and what it will do, it will call this URL, which has this URL is basically the API, just like random user slash API. So this is the API of Wikipedia, and what we have changed here is that and if you just copy paste it from the Google, so here we will have and search is equal to, there will be some default value. So every time you call it, it will just search that default value. So for that, we have added the search term that we input over here. So we have added it to the search. So whatever we enter here, so it will search it. Then same as before, same as before, same as before. Now when we get the response, so it will just simply show the response to us, that is Toyota and the URL. So here it is. Now one of your tasks would be to implement it and see what this response of X means. So it will, what we are doing here, we are having a for loop, and in every iteration it is searching for the response, whatever the detail is in the Wikipedia page, and it is giving us the response back. Like we are using the first object only. We can, let's say if I make it 1, so let's see what it is then. Let's say I write Toyota again. See, so in the first it means in the second element of this response array, we have this data over there, Toyota Supra. If I make it 2, 3, so it will change. So you can change it, you can change it on your own will. All right, then let's come to the YouTube. Okay, so getting this API is really easy, but getting the API for YouTube, it requires a little bit of work. How can you do this? Okay, this is also one of your assessment, that just copy paste this code, but you have to make your own YouTube API and paste the API over here. Like after this, you can paste it over here, that is the key is equal to this is your API. From key is equal to this, so this is AIZ till 5U, this is your API. So you have to paste it over here, and then you will be able to see the results. You cannot see the results most probably on my API, because this is just installed in my computer. So how can you get the API for YouTube? You should just simply write you should write YouTube API okay. So Google Developer is open for all. So in order to get to the Google Developer, you should make you should sign up to the YouTube first using your Gmail account. So this is the Google Developer. Then I'll go to guide, So here you can get all the steps that how to create an API, but just for simplicity, I would just simply go to obtain authorization credentials, sorry, Google Developers Console. All right, now let it load. Okay, so this is the web engineering. This is the project that I've just made. You can also, so what will you do? You will create the new project and you will name it something. Let's say test project, right? Okay, so my new project is made. Okay, now let's go to that project. So in order to get the API, you have to make a new project and get the key. Now I am in, let's go to the test project. Okay, so I'm now in the test project. Now what will I do? I will simply go to the dashboard again and I'll go to the library. Once I go to the library, I'll just come down and I'll click on YouTube Data API version 3. Okay, so once I click this enable, I'll get the okay, after some options. This university's internet is quite slow. Okay, so click create credentials, and click here YouTube API, choose JavaScript and make it public. Now once you click this what credentials do I need, you will get the API. Just copy it and you will get this sort of a code, where it is, this sort of code. So just change this and paste your own API, then you will be able to see the results. So I'll just upload this file and you can change it. Okay, so and then we'll just simply show the thumbnails and the video ID and the title. All of these are again in the data items, as here it was in the response. So here it is in the data items. So using that we can create some this sort of a page. Now the assessment would be to call change the Google the YouTube API to your own API, and then one other assessment would be to use Twitter API and do whatever you want with that in this page. So that would be your assessment. So that was all about AJAX, basically sort of basics of AJAX. So I hope you people would have learned something. If there is any problem in this lab and in the previous lab, just please let me know. I'll upload one assessment and it will cover both the labs, so it will be marked 20 points. So thank you so much and take care. Allah Hafiz.